Welcome everybody to Buddhist Center. We'll just get started in 1 second. Okay. Again, here we are. Welcome to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and tonight we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good, or we have in our prayer book Source of All My Good, sometimes translated as the foundation of all good qualities. Request or a begging for a mountain of blessings. So before we get started and look at this text that we've been so fortunate to look at so many different times through so many different lenses in terms of stages of our own spiritual development, let's get into a place where we can really properly look at this teaching and set a motivation that's more neutral. Usually we come in very distracted. We have things in our mind that we're very attached to. We have things in our mind that we were very averse to, and it's causing all kinds of disturbance and disruption. And if we leave it at that place and then try to absorb the teachings or try to set a good motivation and develop love and compassion and the wisdom realizing emptiness, that it's not really going to be very successful. So all the great teachers always say, first, get your mind down to a more reasonable place before you try to engage in virtue. And you see that the posture is so important when we look at the great texts. We see that even in the six preparations, or if we see just generally speaking in presentations about meditation, that one of the main parts that's emphasized is getting into a posture that will allow your mind to be very clear. So this is why we do that, because we want to have clarity of mind, and we want to be able to sustain meditation with that clarity of mind for long periods, and our body needs to be in the best positioning to be able to do that, so that when we eventually can hold objects of observation for hours at a time, we don't have to worry about our body not being able to sustain that length of time that our mind has then been able to mature into a calm enough place to be able to sit for that long. So we're going to get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. We've gotten into this many times before. We're not going to go over all of the details of it. So tonight we're just going to get right into the 7-point Vairocana posture. Anybody who's new, you can find that in so many different presentations I've given, so many different teachers give. So the main thing is just make sure that your back is straight, vertebrae like a stack of coins. So we get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, and we're going to begin breathing through our nose only. So we breathe in all the way through to the top of the breath, filling our lungs and our diaphragm, and then we turn that breath around and we exhale. And exhale all the way out. And on the exhale, we actually count. So we would breathe in all the way to the top of the breath, filling the lungs and diaphragm, and then exhaling, counting 1. Breathe in, bring it all the way to the top of the breath, filling the lungs and diaphragm, exhaling, counting 2. So we're going to do this and make sure that that focal object of the breathing in and breathing out and counting is the only thing that we allow our mind to focus on. So anytime we see our mind straying, being distracted, or losing that object because of dullness or sleepiness, if it starts to not be clear, or if our mind is distracted or scattering, then we allow our introspection to say, hey, it's doing this. Our spy in the mind recognizes it, and our mindfulness brings it back to the object of observation. So let's begin by breathing in and out only through our nose. Again, and we'll do that for a short period of time so that we can get our minds to a more neutral state, a more calm state from which we can build virtuous practices and eventually be able to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment, that unites with the wisdom realizing emptiness. So let's begin breathing. Continue focusing on the breathing in and breathing out and the counting. Now add about 2 feet in front of you, about eye height, maybe the size of your thumb, 2 inches or so tall. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. Beautiful, radiant, 3-dimensional, light body. If you're not familiar with Buddha Shakyamuni is the thangka behind my head right now. So now breathing in, breathing out, and counting and imagining the front generation of Buddha Shakyamuni. We're so fortunate to be able to think of such a holy being who's abandoned all negative qualities, has only excellent qualities. We will do the same. The Buddha is a completely reliable guide that can show us how to achieve the abandonment of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, because he or she has done this. We're so, so fortunate. We have this Buddha nature. Our mind will transform into the pure mind of the Buddha. Our mind's nature is exactly the same nature, empty of objective reality, that the Buddha's mind currently possesses. Our minds possess the same nature at an ultimate level. We recognize that conventionally our mind is sullied with the various mental defilements of afflictions, driven by anger, by ignorance. But we have a mind that can be purified. We have a mind that doesn't have to be dissatisfied, that doesn't have to experience so much suffering and pain and anxiety and depression. We have a mind that can be purified of all the things that cause those states. We can achieve the same exact state of mind that the Buddha has: perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, perfect skillful means. So blessed to be able to have this opportunity that's so clear and logical. We don't have to guess. We have a stage of the path presented to us so clearly, the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. We have them presented to us so clearly. If we practice them, we can achieve the results that the holy beings that are our heroes, like Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Buddha Shakyamuni, Nagarjuna, and so forth, but Lama Tsongkhapa, we can achieve the same realizations that they have achieved and they achieved previously by relying upon the same exact path that we have presented before us. I feel so, so happy. So, so fortunate. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni explodes into the entire merit field. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni has been housing all of the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Imagine that all of the holy beings now are in the space in front of you. You see Buddha Shakyamuni is still there, but then you see all of the Gurus. You see Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Malatensen Ladren, Geshe Aga, all of these incredible, incredible beings, any being that you consider a holy being, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all of these holy, holy beings. Imagine the space in front of you, all the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya, to Asanga and Basu Bandhu, and Dharmakirti and Dignaga, and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra, and Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha, and all those holy beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri, to Nagarjuna, and Buddhapalita and Aryadeva, and Chandrashita, and Shantideva, and Chandrakirti, and all of these Baba Vega, all of these holy beings, and Lord Atisha, and Sirlimpa, and Dron Tompa, and the three Kadampa lineages, and all of the holy, holy beings of the Nyingma, Kaju, Sakya, and Galupa lineages. Imagine that the holy deities of the highest Yoga Tantra, Yogic Tantra, Performance Tantra, and Action Tantra deities are in the space in front of you. All of the 35 Buddhas, all of the protector deities. Imagine that all of these holy beings are in the space in front of you and are so happy, so proud, and just so full of joy that you are here today and doing something that will actually allow you to achieve happiness in a real way, allow you to achieve fearlessness, a freedom from suffering that will actually be permanent. And this is all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas care about, is they care about allowing us to achieve. They care about showing us the way to achieve complete freedom from suffering altogether, and a state of bliss. And that is the state that the Buddhas abide in, and they're the most reliable guides because they've gotten to that state that we wish to achieve. And they've done so through a bodhisattva path where they've said, I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And that wish and that desire to take care of all sentient beings now just manifests into day and night, them looking to help sentient beings achieve a state of Buddhahood. So now they see that we're here doing something good, doing something about our own spiritual progress, and we see an amount of bliss that comes over the entire merit field. And we imagine that now we have infinite hands and we grab all sentient beings and lead them here to this teaching. We imagine that we bring all the hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods beings here. We have no bias whatsoever. We no longer have labels like, oh, this is my friend, this is a stranger, this is an enemy. We see all sentient beings as beings we'd be equally be willing to help. And we equally want them to be free from suffering, the causes of suffering, have happiness and the causes of happiness, and so forth. And we've said we're going to take it upon ourselves, the task of bringing them all to a state of happiness and so forth. And we know that we can only do the little that we can do right now, and that's bringing them here. So now we've done that. We bring all sentient beings here to be able to hear these teachings, to lead them in the prayers, to be able to show them these teachings that are so pure from Lama Tsongkhapa on the source of all my good. So now imagine that all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas erupt with an amount of bliss that they can't believe, because all sentient beings are here without bias. Nobody's arguing. Nobody has any problems with each other. Everybody is here just with one goal in mind, and that is to achieve fearlessness and infinite happiness. And this bliss starts to kind of brew in all of the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. And imagine that white light rays and nectars and red light rays and nectars and blue light rays and nectars begin to kind of bubble up in the space in front of you with all of these holy beings. That there's just like from their bliss, these rays of method, wisdom, and purification are coming out. And now imagine that you and all sentient beings have a white Om on your crown signifying your body, a red I at your throat signifying your speech, and a blue Hum at your heart signifying your mind. And now imagine that the white light rays and nectar shower down and turn into white Oms and dissolve into the Om on your crown and all sentient beings' crown, and imagine that your body is purified. Imagine that the red light rays and nectars shower down on you and all sentient beings and dissolve into the Ah at your throat and all sentient beings' throat and purify your speech. Imagine that blue light rays and nectars shower down, coming from the bliss of the merit field of all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Khenser Geshe Wandak, so happy and smiling, and from that bliss that he's experiencing, these blue light rays and nectars are showering down, turning into blue Hums, dissolving into the Hum at our crown, at our hearts and all sentient beings' hearts, and transforming our impure minds into pure minds. Now imagine that we have a pure body, speech, and mind. Just like the Buddha has pure body, speech, and mind, and we have complete fearlessness and complete bliss. Just imagine what it would be like to abide in that state just for one moment. So we imagine that the resultant state of Buddhahood has occurred. So we leave the imprints in our mind of what that would be like, and that we want that. So just hold that state for a moment. Okay. And from that state, we now recognize that the only thing that we can do for sentient beings right now is to engage in prayers with them and lead them to the teachings and so forth. And we know that if we become the reliable guide that we take refuge in, the Buddha, then we'll be able to truly, truly help all sentient beings. So we say to ourselves before we start reciting these prayers with all sentient beings around us and all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in front of us, making this pledge, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And with this motivation in mind, We'll recite, because tonight we're on the impermanence section of the Source of All My Good, we'll begin with reciting the Sutra on Impermanence, and then we'll recite the Heart Sutra in Tibetan. So, homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in the Antapindada's park in the Jeta Grove in Shravasti, along with a large monastic assembly. The Bhagavan addressed the monks as follows. Monks, 4 things are appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. What are those 4? Monks, good health is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Good health, however, ends with sickness. Monks, sickness is neither appealing, nor is it singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, youth is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Youth, however, ends with the aging of the body. Monks, the aging of the body is neither appealing, nor is it singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, prosperity is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Prosperity, however, ends with its decline. Monks, the decline of prosperity is neither appealing, nor is it singled out, nor considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, life is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Life, however, ends in death. Monks, death is neither appealing, nor is it singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Thus spoke the Bhagavan, the Sugata, and having spoken, the teacher added these words. Good health is impermanent. Youth does not last. Prosperity is impermanent, and life, too, does not last. How can beings afflicted as they are by impermanence take delight in desirable things like these? When the Bhagavan had thus spoken, the monks rejoiced and praised his words. This completes the Sutra on Impermanence. Now we'll read the Heart Sutra. There we go. I'll read it in Tibetan. It's good for us to have the imprints. And Rinpoche gave the transmission so many times in Tibetan to us. I think it's a nice that we continue to read it in Tibetan sometimes and continue to seek that blessing. And then we hear the Sanskrit in the beginning of it. So. I hope everybody's doing great. Okay, so this is the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, the Heart Sutra, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma at Rajagir, Vulture Peak Mountain in India. And this is where the Buddha taught the actual ultimate reality at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the final truth in terms of what one needed to have in order to get rid of the origin of suffering. Period, full stop. Whether one wants to achieve an abiding nirvana of a hearer, a solitary realizer, or the state of Buddhahood, the same exact wisdom realizing emptiness is necessary, and we find that specific presentation of that kind of wisdom realizing emptiness, that final view, presented at the Heart Sutra, and that's the middle way consequence view, the Madhyamika Prasangika view of emptiness that negates objective existence, that negates inherent existence, intrinsic existence. These are all synonymous. It doesn't negate existence, and this is the very complicated part that we have to, for over years and years and years, understand better and better. So this isn't something, the lack of inherent existence of reality isn't something that we just say, oh, okay, I have it, or, oh, I understand, because it dependently originates. It must be that. So it's something that we have to over and over and over again identify in terms of what is the object of negation here, and identify it in our mind. And the object of negation here is objective existence, intrinsic existence, inherent existence. So we have to start at a point where we say, well, what if it had this inherent existence, and then start to untangle it to show that, oh, that's not tenable. And then we can land at a lack of inherent existence, but then still find the existence and still find the functionality of karma and its results and so forth, and how we can be born and die and get sick, have birth, aging, sickness, and death, and so forth. Be able to still posit all of those things as existence, as realities, but see that every single one of those things, whether it's self of person or phenomena, have no intrinsic existence whatsoever. And the Bodhisattva path that's implicitly taught within this Heart Sutra, that shows 5 specific pathways, is also empty of inherent existence. So this is something that we come to understand, that when we look at the commentaries on this text, that the implicit meaning of this is the bodhisattva pathways, the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of meditation. Path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning, and so forth, and the bodhisattva grounds that start at the path of seeing. But we don't see it explicitly taught on the outside. We have to see that since this is the condensation of the 100,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it's implicitly contained within it. So we look to commentaries on the 100,000 verse and 20,000 verse and 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, like the Abhisama Alamkara, Maitreya's Ornament for Clear Realization, to find these facts out about these great texts. But in the meantime, they can bless our mind. We can think about emptiness. We can think about the 5 paths, and we can try to, as we become more and more influenced by emptiness, and more as our learning grows, it'll mean more when we recite this text, and it won't just maybe be an imprint. It'll be something we can meditate on as we hear these holy words. So we'll start now listening to the holy words of the Heart Sutra, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, that Lord Buddha Shakyamuni was so kind to share with us. Papa Shereji Baradi Shimi Nimbo Jozo Jagagedo Bhagavati Brajamaramita Randeya Bigido Jamdende Ma Shereji Baradi Shimi Nimbo Bombo Jigo Digitagi Dubadujina Jamdende Jabikachu Bambi Regalungi Gendun Jumbo Dan Janchi Semi Gendun Jumbo Dan Daji Dushu JD Jamdende Samo Nawan Jeja Wuchi Jina Dandi Jingzila Nyomba Shusu Yandi Janchi Zamba Zamba Jumbo Baba Chenrezi Wanju Shereji Baradi Shimba Samo Jubanila Namba Najim Bomong Abo Dita Lion Ranjan Shetomba Nabo Dao Tene Sanjeji Du Zedan Demba Sharibu Janju Zamba Zamba Jumbo Baba Chenrezi Wanju Ladi Gechi Mezo Riji Bongala Shereji Baradi Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba De Jida Lapa Jadi Gechi Meba Dan Janju Zamba Zamba Jumbo Baba Chenrezi Wan Shu Gitsi Dan Demba Sharada Di Bula De Gechi Mezo Sharibu Riji Bongala Shereji Baradi Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba De Da Naba Daba Jade Bumong Abo De Da Jan Ranjin She Toma Naba Yanda Ba Jasu Dao Zu Tombo Tomani Zuzo Zule Tomani Shemayeno Tomani Lejan Zu Shemayeno Deshin Duzo Wadan Dushetan Naba Sheba Nandamba Sharibu De Da Ju Tamche Tomani De Zeni Meba Ma Jeba Magaba Jema Meba Jema Janro Ajram Meba Gawa Meba O Sharibu De Doana Domani La Zume Zoame Duje Me Nama Sheba Me Mime Name Jeme Lume Ime Zume Drame Jime Rome Rejame Jume Do Migame Bene Ichigame Ichinaba Shebi Bardi Amadom Ripa Me Ripa Zeba Me Gashi Me Gashi Zebi Bardi Yame Do Deshan Dudung Yowadan Goju Wandan Gobodon Name Yeshime Dopa Me Ma Dopa Yame Do Jarebu Dedowana Janju Samba Nando Ma Baby Shereji Baro de Shimbala Denji Nede Zemla Jiba Mejin Drapo Metu Jinji La Lejanji La Deni Nyanin Le Debi Dar Jindu Duzundo Namba Jube Zanje Danje Jang Shereji Baro de Shimbala Deni Lana Mebe Yanda Bazobi Janju Dupa Umba Zoba Zanje Zo de Dowana Shereji Baro de Jimenga Riba Jemenga Lana Mebenga Menyamba Danyabenga Dunya Jabju Rabji Shewa Shebenga Mizumbena Neba Sheba Jade Shereji Baro de Jimenga Mebati Ata Ongate Gate Paragate Parasangati Buddhizo Jaribu Janju Zamba Zamba Jumbo The Dajiji Baradi Shimba Samola La Baja, or the Najon, then they did Ding and de Legion, de Janjisama Samajama Baba Generasi, Wanjula Lezo, Jejo, Jene, Lezo, Rigibon the Dajan, or Rigibon the Dajan, Ejidadu, the Dembajin, to Jeriji Baradi Shimba Samola Jebaja, they did Jibananja, Nesu Yerang, or Jom then they did Getsi Gatsi, Nate and Demba Sharada, the Ibutan, Janjisama Samajama Baba Generasi, Wanjudan, Tamche Dan, Demi, Dibico de Dada, Lada, Midan, Lama Yidan, Jesa Gibiji, then Yerande, Jom then they did Zumbala, Nyompa, Do, Gala, Jube, Nejo, Damba, Neng, Dojo, Ngayi, Dodo, Gentru, Babu, Lama, Yibu, Shinzi, Nizon, Gandra, Zola, Jazelo. I prostrate to the gatherings of the Dakinis and the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like a mother looks after her child. Aga Zamara, Jashandara Zamara, Aga Zamara, Jashandara. Aga Samara Janara Samara Yame, De Adon, Gati Gati, Paragati, Parasangati Buddhizo, Baba Gonjuzanji, Gai, Demedoji, Lobodoji, Mebodoji, Jewadoji, Jagi Baji, Medubeja, Naji, Ringo, Zoa, Girin, Jonaji, Jewada, Medon, Nubejan, Androada, Tumbadunji, Bozon, Zoji, Dashi, Dejan, and Dadele, Show. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanye Jadan Zaji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jiji Bezonanji Drola Benji Sanje Dubarjo Zanye Jadan Zaji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jiji Bezonanji Drola Benji Sanje Dubarjo Zanye Jadan Zaji Janan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Bezonanji Drola Benji Sanje Dubarjo. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. The one who is transformed into a reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you, I make prostrations. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay. Here we are. Everybody on the other applications, I'm sorry I had to turn comments off. I can't see them, so I don't want to be rude. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring all of everyone. But this is a regular teaching that we do on Thursdays and Sundays, and thanks a lot for joining. So tonight we're talking about a really wonderful short little poem by Lama Tsongkhapa called "The Source of All of My Good," and this little poem encompasses incredible amounts of material once you start to study more and more and more of the Lamrim, and you look at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and then we have the medium stages of the path to enlightenment, and then we have the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, and then you have this very, very small poem that is short, that encompasses all of the material in the just mentioned works. So the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we know, is in 3 volumes, and one could argue also that the great treatise on the stages of the tantric path to enlightenment are all contained in this very, very short work. So we look at the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment alone. That's very thick in Tibetan, 700 or 800 pages. I don't know the exact page count. I apologize. but in English we know that it's 3 volumes. And then the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Tantric Path is another very, very large text, like the Lam Rimchemo, like the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. So very skillful for Lama Tsongkhapa to be able to include all of the meaning contained within those works that are the stages necessary for each and every one of us to practice if we wish to get rid of the states of suffering that we have to experience over and over again, and if we want to be able to be of the most, best aid, be most helpful we can to others, it's going to be necessary for us to do exactly what all the holy beings have done in order to achieve their realizations. And we're so lucky that we have, like, step 1, first, find a teacher. Step 2, recognize that you've got some good stuff. You have a human basis, and there's Buddhism in the world, and it's even Buddhism where you live. So it's interesting how you go through these stages, and it's just shown to us in such a clear, easy way. And I don't know how many of you have, taken some of the larger sutras that are published in English and tried to figure out, where you'd be if you knew nothing about any of the stages of the path when looking at some of these quotes of the Buddha. Do this, but don't do that. When you're doing this, do it well. And that's referring to, when you look at some of the figurative teachings and the literal teachings, or the interpretive teachings and the literal teachings, one has to be quite careful. And it becomes, not as big of a task if you have the outline that we find so beautifully given to us by Lord Atisha, by taking all of those extensive deeds lineages and profound view lineages and the lineage of blessings and all the great meanings of those texts and putting them in an order that shows us how to practice them. And then great beings in the Lam Rim and Kadampa tradition like Lama Tsongkhapa then expanding on the little bit that Lord Atisha, so you gave us this little work, Lord Atisha, we need more, please expand on this. And then, Gampopa in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, of course, wrote beautiful points about the stages of the path, and then Lama Tsongkhapa, and then Kirtap Jelsop, and then all of the Lam Rim teachers from there. First Dalai Lama starting, and then the 3rd Dalai Lama, and the 7th Dalai Lama, who's more about Lojong, but we see, it's all kind of mixed in there. The Lojong is in the Lam Rim. And we just see it go on in the Dalai Lama's lineage and that connection to the Lam Rim and stages of the path to enlightenment teachings. Just so fortunate to have Lama Tsongkhapa have just written this incredible jewel called the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment that just shows us and clarifies and helps us make our way through some of the points in the earlier stages that we may miss or not know how to practice. We're so fortunate because the stuff in the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Tantric Path is wonderful. But for a being like me, what has been so impacting, what's really just made a big dent on the mess of my mind, if you're trying to, destroy it, what's really made a dent on the mess of my mind are these early teachings on, the teacher and on death and impermanence, these things that are just such empirical realities that are so easy for us to understand and convince ourselves of. And then when we start to be able to get a grasp on how emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness, plays into all of our experiences and all of our actions and plays the main role, really you could say, argue if you want, the only role in terms of keeping us bound to suffering, in keeping us bound to suffering, the only role is that ignorance. It's that misapprehension of reality. So it's that the wisdom realizing emptiness that is what we're all trying to get to, whether it's fueled by renunciation and it gets us out of cyclic existence only and it gives us fearlessness and we're able to achieve an abiding nirvana and a here or a solitary realizer state, or if it takes us to that complete state of Buddhahood, we can do it with the stages of the path. Sorry, I lost track. So let's start by reading this text a little bit. I think let's just jump right into it because we have some stuff I want to cover tonight. It starts, "The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence." We went over last time. It can be the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord, or Queen if you wish. Please take we would say Lord because J is there. Bless me to see that taking myself to him or her is totally appropriate. Lama Tsongkhapa had male teachers, but of course there are incredible scholars I speak to on a regular basis. Female scholars, geshemas, that have the same exact degree as the monks do, and there's no difference in terms of our Buddha nature. There's no difference in terms of aptitude, potential, or anything like that. I mean, it's just wouldn't be any reason to not say him or her, but just always pointing that out when we look at this stanza, that we have these incredible practitioners, and we have female Buddhas and male Buddhas, and we have the whole host of beings that we can rely upon. So I just wanted to point that out. Next stanza. So we know that the foundation of all of our excellent qualities, even starting at the basic level, is we need a teacher in order to learn this information. We need a qualified teacher in order to learn the right information, because we won't be able to have wisdom if we don't have the right information, and it will take a qualified teacher to give us that right information, because the only way we can get to that place where we see emptiness that's necessary if we want to achieve abiding nirvana or Buddhahood, the only way that can happen is to realize emptiness directly. So that's the only shot that we have at achieving any of the aims, whether they're motivated by renunciation or motivated by bodhicitta. So in order to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, the wisdom arisen from analysis, and the wisdom arisen from meditation in relation to emptiness, we really have to have somebody who knows that topic well, knows how to get us to that topic, and knows how to show us the supporting practices of renunciation and bodhicitta that allow the ripening of the results to occur when combined with that wisdom. The same wisdom, but the combination matters, the motivation matters. So that's why we need a teacher who has complete qualifications, has complete accurate material to give us, so that what we're analyzing produces an actual proper realization that can cut the root of cyclic existence. And then it says, "Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day." So in Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary, we see there's 4 categories in the outline. It says first, taking on, the teacher is the first, and then what to do after you've found a teacher. So, how to develop faith and reverence in the teacher, and how to keep increasing that faith and reverence in the teacher. And then once you've found a teacher, how to engage in the stages of the path. So this next stanza that talks about the life of leisure and opportunity is, in Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary, what one does once one has found a teacher. You start to meditate on these topics. And it begins, the first topic after the teacher is the life of leisure and opportunity. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So we went over this stanza quite a bit, and we saw that, Lama Tsongkhapa says, bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I have these 8 leisures. And we pointed out why he didn't say leisure and opportunity I have, because when we look at the opportunities, there's the 5 inner and 5 outer opportunities, and the 5 outer opportunities start with the Buddhas in the world. And we know that it's speaking of like the historic. Buddha Shakyamuni is no longer in the world. Even though we can say our teachers are Buddhas and so forth, we don't technically have that, even that first outer quality. And the disciples, the direct disciples, aren't here and so forth. So we see that Pabonka Rinpoche points out that this is why Lama Tsongkhapa only points out leisure, life of leisure, because a lot of times you say leisure and opportunity, but here he's speaking about his own personal experience and knowing that there's only the leisures, because it's in order for there to be the full opportunities in terms of external opportunities. So the internal opportunities, being born a human in a central land, having all your faculties complete, not being lost to a heinous karma, and there's faith, and there's a feeling of faith. These five are possible, but the Buddha, then these are inner qualities. The outer qualities, the Buddha is here teaching and teaching the Dharma. The teaching remains. The ones who follow it or who are taught directly of the Buddha are here. So we see that technically the four of the outer opportunities aren't with us if the Buddha's not here, and the disciples directly of the Buddha, like Shariputra, Mugiputra, these direct disciples, it's meaning in a technical aspect, and we went over, but that's okay. We're in the same boat as Lama Tsongkhapa. We're in the same boat as Arya Nagarjuna, and so forth. So we can't say, oh, we don't have the five outer qualities, so we can't really do much. We're not going to be able to become Buddhas in this lifetime. We won't be able to achieve renunciation or bodhicitta or the wisdom realizing emptiness because we don't have these five outer qualities. And this is, not a good point. It's not logical, because we know that all of these holy beings have achieved so many realizations, have achieved levels, have achieved complete Buddhahood in dependence upon the teachings at a time when the Buddha wasn't present. So we see why it's pointed out about just leisure. And we see I found just this once. It's ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Valuable because I can engage in the teaching shared in common with beings of small, medium, and great capacity. And I have the most excellent human basis body to practice the Mahayana from. So the great vehicle is the bodhicitta is the only entrance into the Mahayana. I have the best, human basis from which to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And once I'm a bodhisattva, once I achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment, then at that point I'll still have the best human body, because even the bodhisattvas in the high realms pray to be born into our world system because of the nice kind of pleasant mix of happiness and suffering that can be seen and heard and so forth, and it will help enhance the love and compassion that you have for all sentient beings once you're a bodhisattva, and you'll have more material to work with as a bodhisattva, because you work with sentient beings. The more you have around you to help, and the more you have around you to make you more patient, and the more you have around you to understand the lack of inherent existence of, the quicker you can achieve your realizations. And all of those things have to be operating at the same time. I jokingly say to see them as empty, but one has to, once you're a bodhisattva and before you're a bodhisattva, start to see that all of these activities that you're doing, when you're making offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that you yourself is empty of inherent existence. Making the offerings itself are empty of inherent existence. The Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are empty of inherent existence. So it's important to keep that perspective, and in whatever terms you can, even if it's at the lowest perspective of this, the coarsest selflessness, seeing this quick impermanence that's happening all the time, just always trying to keep in mind and loosening the grip that you have on selfhood, whether it's in terms of self of person initially and then self of phenomena ultimately, because one has to recognize the emptiness of all phenomena in order to even realize emptiness. There's no half realizing emptiness. Arya Deva points that out. The Madhyamika Prasangika school points out that there is no lower emptiness to realize. There's emptiness, period, full stop. There's not a little emptiness to know. There's full emptiness to know. If you know a little emptiness, you're on your way to knowing emptiness. You don't know emptiness. You hear what I'm saying? Like if you understand the emptiness of self, a person only, you don't understand emptiness. You understand. You're on your way to understanding emptiness. You're doing better than someone who doesn't understand that point, but you don't understand emptiness. If you don't understand the lack of objective existence of all phenomena, every little bit of phenomena. If you have a partless particle, or you think that phenomena can be divided down to some littlest point where there's some kind of inherent existence, or you think that you have some sort of substantial existence that can be found, there isn't an idea of complete emptiness. And if you believe that external reality doesn't exist at all whatsoever, then you don't have the view of emptiness. If you think that things don't exist whatsoever, you don't have the view of emptiness. If you find any substantial, inherent existence, intrinsic existence, any kind of objective reality that you find that isn't a conventional subjective existence, then you don't have what emptiness is talking about. And if you want to understand conventional existence, you can't do so without understanding ultimate reality. We say, oh, we're dealing in the conventional. We don't understand conventional existence. Conventional existence is concealed truth. We have to know what the truth is, then you can see what's concealing it. You can see the parts around it concealing it that allow it to emerge as this or that. That allow that emptiness that allows it to emerge as this or that in dependence upon this at the coarsest level, the cause and effect, and then we see collections and parts, and then we see that truly what's going on is there's all of that collections and parts and so forth, but a subjective perceiver that through the power of a name is bringing these things into existence, and that these things are only existent through the power of a name. So this is what we have to come to realize, and we will do this in a gradual fashion, and we can't take for granted that we understand it, and if we haven't investigated it completely thoroughly. So this is the value that we have in it. We have a valuable position from which we can realize the nature of reality, and from which that nature of reality and the realization of it can be supported by bodhicitta and bring us to complete Buddhahood. So this is why it's so valuable. So it says, may I take its essence night and day. May I do something night and day in order to become a Buddha. So taking its essence night and day for a small scope practitioner would be engaging in the practices that would get one out of the lower realms of cyclic existence. That would mean taking its essence night and day. So one would go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, engage in ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and acknowledge one's downfalls night and day. That would be how one of the small scope took the essence night and day took the day's essence. Never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. It takes life's essence night and day for the small scope practitioner. The medium scope practitioner can take life's essence night and day by engaging in the practices shared in common with beings of small capacity and the three highest higher trainings. In developing renunciation and practicing the three highest higher trainings to get out of cyclic existence. And then day and night, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the other text, the three principal aspects of the path, day and night seeking transcendent liberation. So here, taking life's essence night and day for a medium scope practitioner would be day and night, seeking transcendent liberation by engaging in the three highest higher trainings, the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, in order to be free from cyclic existence and achieve an abiding nirvana. And then for the great scope practitioner, the Mahayana practitioner, taking life's essence night and day would be engaging in a practice that would allow one to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, engaging in the Bodhisattva practices, engaging in the practices that lead to the mind that aspires to enlightenment day and night. So this is how we would take the essence in terms of the different scopes of practice. And then, of course, We have the perfection vehicle in the Mahayana, and then the tantric vehicle or resultant vehicle. So if we wanted to get there as fast as possible, and that, the ultimate way to make use of this life is to be able to, in one lifetime, become a Buddha by engaging in the tantric vehicle. But without engaging in the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity and understanding the perfection vehicle, engaging in the tantric vehicle just isn't real. You can say it, you can try it, but it's not going to work. We have to have the foundation of renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, and understanding of the correct view really is a foundation if we want to practice Tantrayana. It won't work. You can try it, it won't work. So that's the end of stanza 2. Stanza number 3. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. So last week we read, I think, out of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the benefits or the reasons for reflecting on death and impermanence, and showing that really all of the later practices are going to require you to have realized this. All the later practices, for you to actually take the essence of life night and day, this is something that you will have to realize. So it says, bless me to take the essence night and day, and then Lama Tsongkhapa drops the bomb. The next topic is death and impermanence. Like, oh, let me take, this life's essence, night and day, let me practice. And then he says, well, time's limited. It's, you have this human basis that's so wonderful, but time's limited. And it says, hold on. I want to go back to this section. So if you have an attitude, so we first work on this coarse idea that we have that we're permanent. We understand the gist that we're going to die. I mean, nobody here is like, oh, no, I'm going to live forever. I have immortal life. No one's sitting around actively thinking like that. Like, I have this, immortality. It's not an active thought, but there's not an active thought either that you don't. And that's the problem. There's this state of limbo that's almost a denial. That state of denial puts you into a state where you actually are, even though you're not actively believing you're immortal, you are kind of. Because that state of denial is so strong, in that inactive looking at death is just so strong. The inactivity of looking at death and impermanence is so strong that there's almost like an inference or this idea in the mind. It's not something that's at the forefront of the mind, but there's this idea of the mind that I'm not going to die today, though. Or, that's for when I'm older or later. Death is something that we talk about and we think about in terms of later. And I would agree. I'm talking to you right now and I haven't died. So if I die in 2 minutes, that's later. But in my mind, I'm not thinking that's the kind of later I'm relating to when I think of death and impermanence. There's a big gap between me right now, in my mind, Jeff talking to you, and Jeff is dying. Like the dying Jeff. Not the one that's dying right now, subtle impermanence for all the scholars out there. Well, you're dying right now. You started at conception. I don't mean that one. I mean the one that's like the coarse dying on your deathbed, like the breathing's not working anymore, and the earth element's not working, and then the water element's drying up, and the fire element's cooling down, and then the wind element's not, breathing so well, and then the space isn't working for the wind to go through. That one. That time, when the colors, the red, the white, all these things happen. That time, there were the sand and all of these things that if you read about go on, and all of these lands, that go on. That time, Jeff right now talking, and that time seems really, really far away. I can even be like, oh, Jeff will die, and I can get that Jeff will die in a pretty, yeah, Jeff's going to die for sure. Come on, guys, we all die, right? But to think that Jeff's going to do that, all those elements are going to dissolve, and then Jeff that's talking will be on a paper that says the deceased. So what I mean in this world will be now a past tense. Like, yeah, he was. And I think about this idea that these elements, like this body and these aggregates, they go to this subtle level, and then I might be a worm? Like, quickly? That gap seems so far away to me. And that's the problem. And that's what makes us not practice day and night. That's what makes us think we've got a little bit more time than we may. And then boom, we don't have any time. And we're sitting there looking at someone who's so old and saying, oh my gosh, they're so close to death. Wow, they're so sick and decrepit. And we're not thinking like, well, wherever we are, we're about to get in a car. Are we going to get to where we're going? We're not thinking in those kind of terms. We're not thinking that this body is just so breakable. We're not thinking in those terms. We're thinking of later on. And we're doing like meditate. It's almost like we can do a meditation on death, and it's like way later on. Like we can be dissolving elements for then. So when I'm ready for when that happens, then. So our death and impermanence meditation can literally become a not death and impermanence meditation. It can be something for later. And the death and impermanence meditation is for like right now situation. So when we think preparing for death, we have to make it seem in our minds. Laman Tsongkhapa says eventually we'll say we could wake up and say it's today, it's happening. Even though it's not. You have that in your mind. What would you do if that was today? If you had 12 more hours to live from a spiritual perspective? Well, you may only have that. So why aren't you doing exactly that? And when your death and impermanence meditation becomes a death and impermanence meditation for something that could happen like right away, not something for later on, then it has the impact to make you, what would you do if today is the day you're going to die? From a spiritual perspective. Would you go out and, look at brochures? Would you go pick out new paint? What would you do today? Not saying your stuff doesn't need to be painted, but what would you do today if you had 12 hours to live from a spiritual perspective? Do you know you even have 12 hours to live? And if that concept isn't just like right in your mind, like I may not, if it seems like that, the earth going into the into the water, into the fire, right, into the wind, into the space, if that seems like something so far away, and not like I have 12 hours to live, and that's something that you may have to be meditating on in 12 hours or 9 or 10 or, you know what I mean? 2 hours. Are you prepared for that process? That's the question. And would you, if you had 12 hours and you knew like in the 12th hour that this is when I'm going to die, you'd probably read up on emptiness a little bit. Okay, so at the time of death, I gotta think of the guru and see him as inseparable from the Idam, and then I gotta this emptiness thing, and then there's gonna be some dissolving. Okay, I know there's dissolving that's gonna take place, and there's gonna be a lot of lights and colors, and there's gonna be scary stuff, and like stuff that looks kind of like Paul de Lamo, or like that kind of scary stuff, and I'm not gonna know if it's demons, or if it's gods, or deities, or if it's helpful or not helpful. Are you ready for that experience? And that's what meditation on impermanence and death is. It's so that if it's in an hour, you're not surprised because it's so at the forefront of your mind. And in an hour, you're like, okay, it's go time. I know exactly what I have to do. In an hour, I know exactly what I have to do. So that's where we want to get to. And that's what this death and impermanent meditation allows us to see, is that we are so fragile. Death will come and nothing can stop it. There's a certainty of death. That meditation, the 3 roots and 9 reasons. And we should become so familiar with this practice It should become such a foundation practice for us. Because if it's not a foundational practice for us, and we aren't day and night practicing, it might be why. If we aren't day and night trying to figure out a way to get out of cyclic existence, it's probably because we don't have a good grasp on this practice. And we see the three roots are the certainty of death, the uncertainty of the time of death, and that the only thing that can help us is Dharma. And then we have reasons that support each of those roots. So there's 3 roots, 9 reasons. So we have reasons that we use to kind of analyze. So when we tell our mind what to do, so we get on our meditation cushion, we tell our mind what to do. We're going to meditate on the 3 roots and the 9 reasons, and we're only going to meditate on that. And we're going to start with each root, and we're going to look at it from every angle possible using these 3 reasons, but then using some more, making our own. Doing some freestyle within this. So we start with, death will come and nothing can stop it. This first reason, the certainty of death. Death's coming. Lord of Death's on the way. There's no chance we're going to make it out of here alive. We will die 100%. There's no way around it. And then you start to think of examples of beings who are no longer with us. And you can't find beings, that were around 150 years ago. You can't, and you start to, come up with all of these beings and come up with the holiest beings you can come up with. The most kind, gentle, caring, loving, holy, religious beings you can come up with even. Not just worldly beings. And you'll see none of them are with us. They've all had to leave this body behind. We certainly will have to leave this body behind. The holy beings left their bodies behind. And wanted to, if they were doing it right. They had to leave these bodies behind. They created beautiful bodies from these gross, contaminated bodies, if the holy beings did. But they've all had to leave these bodies behind. Death will come and nothing can stop it. Life is always being subtracted from and never added to. Can you come up with an idea of how, we're not every moment, because of impermanence, coarse or subtle impermanence, every 1,000 times a second we're moving towards death. We're not moving towards more life. It just doesn't, we don't take steps backwards towards getting younger. It's just so obvious. There's not a lot to think about on this one. We're always losing time. We're not gaining time. Clock's not going backwards. Our age isn't going backwards. Life is always being subtracted from. You can say, well, if I take care of myself, I could live longer. But you are going to live that, even if you're living longer, life is being subtracted from. It's not something that you're going to be able to, add years onto in a general sense. Some practices you can. There can be some rare instances. But when your karma ripens to the point where it's your time to die, that will be when you die. And since the moment you were born, you were moving closer to that moment, not further away from it. And then knowing this is going on, and knowing that we're going to die, we won't have time to practice Dharma. We'll say in 5 years we'll do it, or in 10 years when I retire I'll do it. I'm really buried in work this week. And if we say things like that and we put the Dharma off, it shows what? That we haven't realized death and impermanence. That we don't think that we have 12 hours to live. We don't think in that context. We're supposed to think that we could die at any moment. I understand. I could die today. I could die at any moment. But, even if we couldn't even get to the point where we think maybe we have a day to live. We think we have like all this time, all of this space in between now and when we're going to die. And it's just not reality. So those are the general things that we think about that first root, the certainty of death. That death will definitely come, nothing can stop it, life's always being subtracted from, not added to, and that we won't have time to practice Dharma. So we meditate on this, and we meditate it in all the different ways we possibly can, so we gain conviction in this, and we get closer and closer to that place where the reality of the dissolution of our elements and our death, our eventual death, is more in the forefront. So we take advantage of this life of leisure and opportunity in a more kind of vigorous fashion. Okay, so we get to the uncertainty of the time of death. This is the second root. It's like we don't know of the certain time. So the first is that lifespan's not fixed here, unfortunately. We've gone over this a lot, but we can't go over it too many times. So lifespan's not fixed. If we knew we had 500 years, if we knew we had 1,000 years, some places apparently in other realms, human lifespans are fixed. But in this place called Jambuviba, the southern continent, lifespan is not fixed, unfortunately. We don't know how long we're going to live. Some people die in the womb. Some people die at 5 years old, 10 years old, 20, et cetera, et cetera. And some people live to be 127. But we can't be certain. We don't know. It's not a fixed lifespan. And then the next point is that the causes for death are many, and the causes of more life are few. If we look at all of the things that could kill us right now, that could cause our death, we could just start listing them and probably not be able to stop. Well, I could, Pabunka Rinpoche says that, my life is fleeting like the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave, is referring to the fact that this body can just poof, be gone. You could prick yourself with a thorn, and if you bled out enough, your body would be gone, Pabunka Rinpoche says. It just take a mere thorn, puncturing the right place to end your life. That's how poof your time can be. There's so many things that can cause your death and so few things that can cause life. You could take some vitamins, you could eat well and exercise, but then think of all of the things that could collide into. How many people have you known that were out exercising, out riding their bike and had a heart attack, out running and had a heart attack? I've heard so many of these stories. Out exercising, doing the thing that is ensuring their longevity, and it ends their life or causes their life to be shortened because now they've, had a heart attack or now they've had some, sort of, condition. So life is not, the causes for it to increase are really kind of illusory in a lot of ways. Not to say we shouldn't take care of our bodies. This human basis is so precious and we have to do the best that we can. But there's so many things that can come and collide with it. And this is the point of recognizing the impermanence, recognizing that this next point, the body is quite insignificant. So the three reasons within this root, this time of death's not certain. It's not fixed in Jambuviba where we live. There's more causes for death than life. And this body is weak. This body is insignificant. This body doesn't take much to break down and to be in the state where suddenly all of the elements are dissolving. It doesn't take much for that to happen. Sometimes it happens in a quick way, sometimes it happens at the end of a life, but the end of a life isn't certain when it's going to happen, and this body is so insignificant. This body will actually be the demon that takes us out. The thing that makes our consciousness have to leave will be that this body, will break and will no longer be able to support this life. This life will come to an end. Our karma won't be able to support the arisal of this body, but the human basis that we have has kind of like 100-year-ish expiration date on it, and we just have to be aware of that. So those are the three reasons that we put behind the uncertainty of the time of death. And then the last is the nothing can help but Dharma. So we see that our friends can't help. Our friends, when we look at the 6 sufferings and we see the uncertainty, that uncertainty is that, our friends become our enemies become our friends. In previous lives, our enemies were our friends. In previous lives, we had all these different relationships in cyclic existence. We had so many different relationships. And we will have those relationships change again if we take another rebirth in samsara, if we take another rebirth in cyclic existence. There's an uncertainty there. And when we die, we will be alone again. We will be the one that has to go on this journey and then meet new folks or beings, other creatures that we call our kin. And then we'll believe it all again. And they may have been our enemies in our previous life. And we have to understand that process, we don't have any friends that we can say, this is the one who's going to be with me. Our friends can't help. They can lean over us at the time of death and say, we're so sad that they're leaving, but they don't want to, they couldn't anyway take your place. But now they're just waiting for you to die and waiting to say, now we make arrangements and, you're now deceased, and write the paper. Who's going to sign the death certificate? Because I went through that with Rinpoche. I learned about that. I'd never had to do that. Like, you had to, who has to do this death certificate signing, and, who's in charge of all of these things. You're no, even a holy being like Khensa Geshe Wandak now is on a piece of paper, just with a name. And his remains are in a couple different places in India and in New York and in the Chenrezig Center in Middletown and here at our house. And, this holy being is now just, just memories. So we see that, those holy beings that we establish relationships with us are the Dharma that can help us at the time of death. These are the kinds of things that can truly help us. Our friends are normal relationships in cyclic existence that aren't like our teachers. Really can't help us at that time of death. And our money, our material things can't help us at the time of death. This body, it can't help us. This body we find to be so significant will be the thing breaking. This thing we put all the fancy clothes on and jewelry and fancy tattoos I put on, fancy everything, fancy earrings, anything fancy, to make this body look fancy, this body that will be the thing that breaks down and won't be able to even control its own urine and feces. This body that I hold so clean and so dear is so dirty and will be so repulsive. People won't want to be anywhere near it. It'll be a corpse. This body can't help me at the time of death. It will be called corpse. It will be called stinky, rotten corpse. What will help me? Nothing can help me but the Dharma. The virtue that I've engaged in, that's what I'll bring with me. The non-virtue that I've engaged in, that's what I'll bring with me. Do I still have lots of attachment, lots of hatred, and lots of ignorance? That's the questions that I'll have to ask myself. There'll be no creator asking me these questions. I'll be asking myself these questions. And will I have the right answers? Will I be able to be stable enough to be able to handle that experience? That's the question. Will I have had enough Dharma to be able to help me? Because the only thing that can help me is Dharma. Will I have that Dharma in my mind to be helped? Will I be able to be helped by it? So this is why, if day and night you recognize that you could die any moment, then you'll want to make sure that if the only thing that can help you when that occurs, and it could happen any moment, is Dharma, then every moment you should try to practice, because it's the only thing that'll help you at that moment that you don't know when is coming. So that's the basics around that. So we read last week about how as long as you have an attitude that you're permanent, you'll continually only think of how to achieve happiness and evade the suffering of this life. You won't really look towards spiritual means. You won't engage in religious practice because you won't think that it's important. You won't think of future lives, liberation, and omniscience. And even if you do engage in practices, it'll be just to make you feel better in this life, Lama Tsongkhapa says. So we have to really be careful to make sure that we have an attitude which is truly realistic and is truly in line with reality. We always want to make sure that our reality, what we think is reality, tallies with reality. Like the actual thing that's true. Like, we can have our reality and our delusion and our kind of denial, but then there is reality, and we want to try to make our mind tally with that actual thing that's going to occur. We're going to die, and actually, things don't inherently exist. Those are two realities, And there's Milla. Hi, Milla. You wanted to come into the teaching? Yeah, you're a good girl. Okay, so I think I'm going to end there. I'll read this stanza. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first, thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, What those deeds will bring to me follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. So I'll just leave it at that. But you see, my body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. I could just die. It's just like a bubble. Poof! Finished. But Wonka Rinpoche says, just a thorn. Just bleed long enough. Finished. Poof! And we're quickly moving to that. And it's not to be morbid. It's to try to, get the essence out of every moment that we have. Get the nectar out of every single moment that we have. The nectar out of this life. The juice. Squeezing the juice. What was it in Dead Poets Society? Getting the juice out of this life was something like that. I remember. Sucking the juice out of the marrow. I don't remember, but we really want to try to get the essence of this life. And how do we do that? We get in our mind that, we don't have a lot of time. The only thing that's going to help us is this. So the way that we can truly make use of our time is by doing spiritual practice. So that's where I will end it tonight. Does anybody have any questions? I just want to say thank you, everyone, for continuing to pray for Lori. We go tomorrow to find out. We're going to have a little bit more clarity around her brain tumor. And please continue to pray. Please continue to do Tara mantras. We have a very big connection to Tara around these parts. And that would be fantastic. Or Paul Lamo. Or any deity that you connect with, or Buddha, or just if Jesus Christ you want to pray to, whoever you consider a holy being. We aren't, taking any sides. Any holy being's a holy being. So whoever you pray to, just put in a good word for Lori, because she's just so kind to all of us, and I love her so much. So, all right. If you are attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Thank you all for listening so well. And let's do the concluding prayers. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray that in all our lives may we never be separated from Kensar Geshe Wandak. May we accumulate all of the virtues necessary to keep that connection, whether it's an emanation body in normal worlds or the enjoyment body when we become Arya Bodhisattvas. May we never separate from this holy being and become Buddhas and help him or her lead all sentient beings out of samsara. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all of you as usual. And we'll see you next time. We'll be here on Sunday looking at the Lam Rim again, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more spiritually advanced by then. Thanks a lot.